The Regal Crown Hotel was alive with a brilliance that night, a brilliance so polished and overwhelming it felt as though the very walls had been dipped in gold to honor the man at the center of it all, Richard Harrington, the billionaire whose empire had stretched from humble shipping contracts decades ago to global dominance in technology, real estate, and energy, his name synonymous with ruthless ambition and victory against rivals. And tonight's annual gala was his stage, his arena where employees, investors, and competitors all gathered under chandeliers glittering like frozen constellations to witness both his wealth and his power, and yet, hidden behind the dazzle, between the waiters weaving in practiced silence and the scent of roses fresh from a florist flown in from Paris, there existed a figure no one saw, Anna. The maid in a simple black and white uniform with her hair tightly bound and her eyes carefully lowered, moving between tables carrying trays of champagne with the grace of someone who had learned long ago to remain invisible in a world that worshipped appearances, her steps light, her breath steady, her silence an armor that kept her unseen, for in this world of diamonds, cufflinks, and rehearsed laughter, a maid was nothing more than background noise, meant to clean, to serve, to disappear, but beneath her quiet exterior Anna carried a story, a history, and a connection that if revealed would tear through this glittering illusion of untouchable power and leave every polished soul in that ballroom shivering with shock. And it all began when Richard, standing at the center of the room with his glass raised for yet another toast, stopped suddenly in the middle of his sentence, his eyes narrowing like a hawk locking onto prey, his hand lifting, his finger pointing across the marble floor to the very last person anyone expected him to acknowledge, the maid, and as conversations faltered, laughter died, and an uncanny silence fell, his voice cut across the room in a tone that froze blood as he asked a question no one could comprehend, "Do you still remember what you promised me, Anna?" And in that moment the entire ballroom, filled with politicians, media moguls, socialites, and directors worth billions, turned into stone, glasses hanging midair, smiles stiffening into masks of disbelief, eyes darting between the world's most feared CEO and the maid no one had ever noticed until now, and Anna herself, caught like a deer in headlights, felt her hands tremble as the tray she carried shook slightly, yet she did not spill a single drop, for she had trained herself for years to mask fear, but inside her chest her heart pounded like a war drum, because she had not heard that name spoken by his voice in over 10 years, not since the night her life had fractured into before and after, the night when Richard Harrington had not been a billionaire titan but simply a young man standing in the rain with her, clutching her hand as though it were his last anchor in a world intent on breaking him, and now that past, buried, hidden, locked away beneath years of silence and sacrifice, was alive again in the middle of this ballroom where everyone stared, waiting for her response, yet Anna said nothing, for she knew that the moment she opened her mouth, masks would shatter, truths would bleed, and power would shift in ways no one was ready for. Richard, however, did not move his gaze away, his steel-blue eyes locked on her like a memory he had carried through every boardroom battle, every hostile takeover, every sleepless night of clawing his way to the top, and while the crowd saw only a maid with trembling hands, Richard saw the girl who had once saved him when the world had been determined to crush him, the girl who had whispered promises in the darkness that had fueled his rise, and the girl he had lost to forces he still resented. And though no one in that ballroom knew the truth, Richard knew that Anna was not simply a maid, she was the secret piece of his past, the witness to his scars, the one thread that if pulled could unravel everything he had built, yet tonight he had chosen to reveal her, to drag her into the spotlight, not out of cruelty but out of necessity, because there was something dangerous circling his empire, something ruthless and unseen, and only she carried the answer to it, 4 years ago in a town no one in this glittering room had ever set foot in. A promise had been made between them, and tonight he demanded to know if she still remembered it. The silence stretched until it became unbearable, until the air itself seemed too heavy to breathe, until even the orchestra playing softly in the corner faltered, their notes trembling into quiet, and Anna, forced by the weight of 100 eyes, slowly lifted her gaze, her dark eyes meeting his with a fire that startled those watching, because it was not the gaze of a servant but of an equal, of someone who had known him not as the giant he was now but as the boy clawing his way from nothing. And in her silence was defiance, in her trembling was strength, and in her stare was the echo of something that frightened even Richard's most loyal board members, for it was a look that said she remembered far more than he might wish her to, and as she finally opened her mouth, the entire room leaned forward, suspended between the glittering past and the shattering future, waiting to hear the words that could either destroy or redeem the man they thought they knew.